I would say to talk about it because you don't know who could give you that recommendation to the perfect person for you, the perfect fit. So, as long as you keep talking about your struggles, your wins, your all of that, as long as you keep talking about it to people, you never know when that perfect opportunity to find that therapist is going to be.
Welcome back to the You Need a Counselor podcast. This is a show presented by Heart and Solutions Counseling Agency. We release new episodes every Sunday at 5 p.m. Central and encourage you to batch up that laundry, put away the dishes, plan for the week ahead, or do any other task that might seem daunting while you give our show a listen. You might just be encouraged to call your therapist, connect with this week's guest, or seek out those services you've been considering for a while but haven't made the commitment to yet. If you are in the state of Iowa and are in need of mental or behavioral health counseling, give us a call at 1-800-531-4236. Enjoy the show.
Hello, my name is Dr. Julie Johnson. I am the president and founder here at Heart and Solutions, Mental Health and Behavioral Health Counseling in Iowa.
And I am Carell, here locally in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and I am your guest host today, or a few more days to come, but I'm excited to be here.
And I'm Chrissa Hunt. I am one of our vice presidents at Heart and Solutions in charge of our behavioral health department. And this is our podcast, You Need a Counselor. So we are a podcast designed for people curious about counseling, but have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, and indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
All right, our guest today joins us from our Heart and Solutions Waterloo team. We've got Callie Dahlhauser here today. She is a BHIS counselor. BHIS stands for Behavioral Health Intervention Services. She's an in-home counselor for children here at Heart and Solutions. Just one of our favorite people to hang out with, to talk to. She runs our book club. She is on our QI team. She is on our happiness committee. She just does it all with us, and it's just really, really fun working with her. So we've got Callie Dahlhauser here with us today. Welcome, Callie.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here.
We are so happy to have you here. So now you started your educational journey as a therapeutic recreation major, and then you had a minor in human relations. So can you tell us a little bit about how you picked those subjects, and then how you became a BHIS behavioral health counselor?
Absolutely. So I went to school at the University of Iowa originally as a pre-med major. And when I found out that I have no understanding of chemistry, I decided to choose a different major. I ended up choosing therapeutic recreation because it has a lot to do with patient care, and you can see the change and the difference in your clients. So I majored in therapeutic recreation with my minor in human relations because I love working with people. I love talking to people. I love being around people. So that is kind of why I chose that path.
So, of course, as someone who hears human behavior and just relationships between individuals, my thought is clearly, I know that most problems stem from a relational standpoint. And I know we're going really deep, really fast, which is probably how I like it.
I love it. Yeah.
But give me some insight on your thoughts as it relates to that. You know, most problems stemming from relational interactions.
Sure. So I feel that a lot of behaviors are or can be learned behaviors. So depending on the atmosphere they're around, the environment that they are around, that can influence their behaviors. So that's why I love being able to go in homes and just kind of see the flow of things. And with my job, you can kind of go with the flow and see how they live instead of just going in with structure every time so that you can kind of learn and see where they're coming from.
Yeah. Would you say that's your secret sauce?
I think so. I think it is because I don't always just jump right into my session, but kind of like get comfortable and feel how they're feeling, what kind of thought processes they're going through in the behaviors that they're displaying. And I can only get that kind of experience if I'm living it too with them. So yeah, that would definitely be one of my secrets.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, BHIS, we do go into the home, so you can kind of see like that family dynamic and how they like respond to each other when they're told to clean their room and things like that in like live time, which is one of our favorite things about BHIS, I think. Can you kind of talk about then like the family session parts of BHIS and how you include like parents and family members in those services?
Yes. So I like to get the whole family involved, siblings even if they want to be active in that session. And I like to see about sibling bonding and how they get along, how their reactions and their tone of voice can change and can change any kind of little moment. So I use those as, learning examples, learning, the building blocks to maybe a different behavior. And I think that seems to help. And then also the parents are there so they can take note of that and say, maybe just next time a change of tone would be better in this situation. So then they know what to expect next time. So kind of getting the whole family involved that way. And then again, that learned behavior, the parents catch on to kind of some of the things that I'm saying, and then they use those going forward.
Absolutely. And so it is a paradigm shift when we're thinking about behaviors and things that people can see that we're doing. And my teacher can see that I'm tipping in my chair and falling on the floor all the time, right? They can see that I won't sit in my carpet seat, right? They can see these things about me, but they can't see the full picture sometimes. And so for you coming in and being able to say like, yeah, it's hard to do homework at home because the TV is blaring, right? Or there isn't a space to sit and do homework, right? So that is such a paradigm shift of, yeah, am I seeing other people sitting down and doing work, right? Am I having relationships that foster me to be able to do that behavior that's expected of me when I'm then out there in the world? So how do you help uh, children, families to kind of make that shift over time in understanding?
Yeah, it's always a gradual shift in behaviors, not just like a sudden, this is what you're doing wrong, do it this way next time. I always try to give them little, like I said, like little stepping stones between like, okay, how can we make this a little bit easier next time? It's not going to be perfect next time because we're still learning, but how can we make it a little bit easier or even come up with a way to avoid getting in trouble next time? So, for example, um, with some of my kids, their tone of voice is something that we're working on. And so we go over, I understand that this is how you said it, and you told me that this is why you said it that way. But next time, let's try and do it and say it in this way. And then I kind of have them role play that so they get how it feels, how it sounds coming out of their mouth, that they can do it, that they do have the competence to present those behaviors, even if it's gradual.
So in hearing the words that are coming out of your mouth, of course, the way that my mind works is like, okay, big picture, practicality, real world, as Julie mentioned. How do you prepare them practically for the real world and at the same time honoring who they are as themselves, right? Because it's sometimes very difficult to own who you are and at the same time still function in reality. So like, how do you help them navigate that? Because I'm sure it's a challenge. So I'd love to get your
Absolutely.
insight on that.
Yes. So I like to meet my clients where they're at and even with their interests. So even using things such as their Nintendo Switch and applying what they're deciding, what their decision making, their how they talk, how they, compose themselves, their character, and applying those to real life situations. So, such as these are, you're getting frustrated, and I can see that it's not an appropriate response. in school, especially in school or in a different place, you have to make sure that you are, appropriately responding. So we talk about the applications in the real world and how some of their behaviors, if they do them at home, how they can be perceived in a classroom setting or in the job, when you get a career. And so those kind of help them form that big picture of maybe changing these behaviors now could influence me in the future or even advance me in the classroom setting or getting a job, getting interviews, stuff like that.
Yeah, like you said, in BHIS, we can take something like their Nintendo Switch. So to the kid, they think they're having fun. They're just playing Nintendo, but relating those skills to those real life situations. Can you give some examples of other behaviors that some of your clients have that you work on or that you work with in BHIS?
Yes. I have some kiddos right now that are preparing for interviews and getting like summer jobs. So using some of the stuff they already know or have learned in school to prepare them for these job interviews is kind of teaching them like, hey, school wasn't all that bad because I have this knowledge now because of I'm doing this right now. I have the knowledge to do this because of school. Whereas before they had such a bad outlook on school. Why do I need to do this? Why do I need to go? Why can't I only choose the classes that I want? So we're using kind of those expectations and boundaries and putting them towards their real life right now. Um, Other things I would say are like more defiant behaviors and teaching them gradually how they can change those defiant behaviors into a positive behavior and still get the outcome that they want positively, not negatively.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're doing a lot of motivational interviewing, right? You're going, okay, why do we care about school? Why do we care about it? And there are certain things that even as parents, right, that we're like, I don't really like. My daughter does a ton of extracurricular physical activities, right? So I know she's covered there. But she's terrible in gym class. Like she can't skip, right? She can't jump rope. She can't, but right, but she can go dance. So and so for me, even as a parent, it's sometimes hard to find that motivation, right? Because I don't really care if she can skip in a certain pattern, right? But I do care that she's meeting expectations in that class. And so setting that up for, yeah, why should she care about gym class when like I don't really care about gym class either, but I do care about her being able to listen to and follow directions of an authority figure like a teacher, right? I do care about her participating when it's expected that she participate. And I do care that she try her best at anything that she does. And so for me, it took that digging, right? That you would kind of do to
Yes.
help the child do and go, okay, yeah, like in the long run, is it going to matter that she can't skip? Probably not, right? In the long run, is algebra 2, are you going to be using that? Probably not. But these are the skills, these are the opportunities to build those skills that we actually do care about. And so, yeah, you care about getting a job this summer because you care about buying a car next summer, right?
Mhm.
So then when you're in math class, it's not about, oh, I need to learn this equation so that I'll know it in 30 years. It's not about that. It's about, I need to learn how to take direction from somebody else. I need to learn how to learn a new skill that is challenging to me. And I need to learn how to do tasks that I think are stupid, right? So, and because that is a huge skill, it's a necessary skill in life. And so, I love what you're doing with that motivational interviewing, right? Like putting that motivation there and making those connections for your clients, because that change is only going to happen if it makes sense for them to
Mhm.
make that change, right? Us telling them, like, you should pay attention more in class. Like, why though? And kids are always asking why. And it's valid. I love that kids ask why. We should all be asking why all the time. So I just think it's awesome. The other things that you have mentioned is how strength-based you are. So you're pulling skills, right, that children are using in their video games. You're using skills that children are using now for their interviews and their job applications. You're going, okay, but you've got strengths and skills already that you're using for school. You've got strengths and skills that you're using in video games, that you're using playing basketball, and bringing those skills into this new skill that they're developing. So that strength-based approach is just so apparent in everything that you're saying, and I just think it's awesome.
Thank
So
you.
great job on that. What's your favorite thing about doing BHIS and working with children on behaviors?
I love being able to pick out the little wins to praise them. I'm all about positive praise. And although maybe they did something wrong, they also did something right in choosing to do that, you know? There's always something that you can pick out that like, okay, you did really well at this, but the expectation was that you didn't ruin this in doing that, you know? So trying to pick out those little wins and praise them first, or even if there's something at the end, you know, you did really good with this session and meeting them where they are. I always give expectations that they're able to meet, you know, not setting them up for failure. Just being that positive person for them to come and talk to.
You know, I don't know if it's on anybody else's mind because I'm sitting here, I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking something, you must have had some experience that has brought you to this point where you're doing this for kids who may have not even received the encouragement that they needed. All they probably heard were those critical thoughts or the criticism. So, of course, the curious mind that I have wants to know what brought you to this point. Like, why is this the direction that you decided to take? Big
Oof.
question, I know.
Yeah. Um, I would say I grew up in a very strict religious background that didn't have a lot of positive praise, but a lot of negative. And so I don't want any kids to feel that way, especially if they're not in control or they don't understand why they're doing something. I want to explain to them. I want them to know that, you know, their behaviors might always not be their fault. That's all they know. But I'm there to help them learn and learn how to go from there to make better decisions and behaviors and a better quality of life. So I think that's probably, and then just with the helping careers that I've had over time, they've brought me even more knowledge in this. So
Yeah, and so with that, can we get into your counseling experience? I know you've
mm,
told us you had a bad counseling experience and a mediocre counseling experience, and you've really struggled finding a good therapist that you relate to really well, and you sounds like maybe have one now. But can we kind of go into that, like maybe what led you into your own counseling experiences and that struggles you've had with finding a counselor?
yeah. So I first started therapy after a bad breakup in high school. It was a, you know, bad high school breakup. And in the town that I'm from, it's very, very small. There's no opportunities or resources for therapy unless you drive a ways. And I didn't realize that, well, I did realize, but everyone in our town knows everyone. So finding a therapist that you don't know or that doesn't know the people you're talking about or stuff like that is very hard. So that was just off-putting there in itself. Um, I then had a job after that I did the EAP program and I got counseling through that and it worked very well, but it was more telehealth. And I just don't feel like I do well connecting with people so much through telehealth. So that was another thing that I was like, oh, I'm not going to continue this. And then I came to the Waterloo area, and it was after I had had my first baby. I ended up with postpartum depression. So I started looking around for someone that was knowledgeable in that and that could help me. And I had just, I had such bad luck. Nobody was taking patients, or the people that I did find didn't have times that worked. I went to two different counselors, two different therapists, and I just didn't have that connection with them. And I felt like something was wrong with me. Why couldn't I connect with these therapists? Because they know the job, they're doing the job, but for some reason I just wasn't comfortable. And then I found out that it's okay to stop seeing somebody if you don't feel comfortable and keep looking instead of just giving up altogether like I had the previous two times. Um, so after that first counselor, I saw a second one, still did not connect, didn't know what was going on. And then I realized that maybe it was something about I might have needed someone with more experience. They were very new and they were under supervisors, and maybe I just needed something more to connect with. And I got a recommendation from someone, and I think that was where it really kicked off there. Someone that knew me and knew this therapist and thought that we would have that connection, that we would get along. I was very nervous. I almost called off my first therapy session with him. I went, and it was immediate connection. So I've gone back to him about 4 times now, and I've branched out and tried different types of therapies, and it's been a great experience so far. So,
Yeah, good for you for not giving up on that. It is so challenging because therapy isn't something that there are things that we experience in our worlds that people talk about a lot, right? So people talk about weddings a lot, right? So when we then start to plan our own wedding, we kind of go, okay, I kind of know a little bit about what this is, right? I've got some context for what is a choice and what is like legally necessary, right? I've got some ideas on that. But with therapy, because we people don't talk about it as much, and there's still stigma around it, right? And so the people are not having like, oh, hey, what'd you do this weekend? Oh yeah, on Friday I saw a therapist, and then I went to, right? Like we're not getting the details of that the way that we get details of somebody learning how to drive and getting their driver's license, right? Things like that. And so we don't get to be prepared for kind of what is us and our preference and what are we allowed to have a preference about and what is just the field and how does therapy work. And so what I love about the example that you're sharing and the example that you're living is that you are allowed to not be comfortable with the first person or the second person or the fifth person. And you are allowed to say, this is not working for me. I'm going to try somebody else because one therapist, right? They say if you've met one therapist, you've met one therapist. And so you met that one, you said, I'm not comfortable. And you were able to go, okay, maybe it's not me. Maybe it's not therapy in general. Maybe it is this person and this right fit. And so I'm going to try again. And I'm just really, really proud of you for continuing to try because it can be so disheartening and it can feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going through so many dead ends. I've done this same assessment, right? This person's asked, or two different people, three different people now have asked me the same questions on the same stuff, right? And I've been through this process, and on top of that, I maybe had to be on a waiting list for the person who it didn't even work out with, right?
Mhm.
So we can feel like we're just spinning our wheels and spinning our wheels, and it can be so difficult to keep going. And so I just love that. I think it's so relatable, and I think that it's so helpful for people to hear that they're not the only one going through that, and that
Not
it
at all.
is possible to find that right fit person. I love that. What was it that allowed you? What was it that helped you to kind of keep going when it felt like this is never going to work?
It was my supervisor at Heart and Solutions that told me that it's okay to kind of shop around for that right fit. And that never dawned on me that, it was just like, okay, therapy's just not for me. And that was just it. But it was just that connection, and her like letting me feel okay with not having that connection with somebody, but continuing to look for it. And that was,
Interesting. That it's what's interesting is I think we're just talking about therapy altogether, but I think my curious mind wants to know what type of therapy, right? Because there's so many modalities, and as someone also that had to go through her own personal journey to find something that fit, what stuck for you? What modality worked for you? At least so the audience can know that it doesn't have to be talk therapy only. And if it was talk therapy, that's okay too.
yeah,
But I would love for you to share that with them.
definitely. I first started out with doing therapy that involved expressing myself through artwork because that is one of my big interests. So I did things like painting rocks and writing on them with, encouraging things that I needed to see or hear every day. Um, that didn't seem to get me where I wanted it to because I was so focused on doing those things that I didn't really talk about the things I needed to. Then I went to talk therapy, and I don't know what it is about me, but I just like to talk. So I think talk therapy is more of my thing. But with my new therapist, I have started E EMDR. Yes. And I have tried that twice, and I was able to process through you know, some of my religious strict background and gave me clarity. It was just, I think I opened my eyes and I was just like in awe that something happened and that I came to a different realization. And I trusted him a whole lot more after that experience too. So that rapport was built because he made me feel comfortable enough to get there. So, yeah.
So our last guest that we just had kind of talked about how he has also been struggling with finding a therapist and kind of came up with like a list of guidelines that he wants a therapist to have. Like,
I
so he's
love
kind
that.
of interviewing them too. Do you think as you've gone through your 4 different therapists lately, like there's certain things that you like for sure want them to have or don't want them to have that kind of have helped you pick a good one?
Yes. I I don't like when they sit there and write everything I say down. So that is something I need to know ahead of time because that's something I just don't connect with. I feel like I need to like stop and pause to let them continue writing down what they can remember. And so I don't like that experience as well. It might work for some people and they might be okay with that, but that is something that it was on that list of, that's not something I think I can connect well with. I never had a preference of seeing a female versus a male. I was always very open, and I think that's good to be open and discuss things with anybody that you think that you might relate with. Reading about the therapist before you contact them, reading about what they specialize in, what some of their certificates might be in. I think that's also really important because that shows you that they don't just work on one specific thing, but they also have knowledge and training in all of these other things that you might fit into. And with postpartum depression, that was one thing that I had to very specifically look out and seek out. So yeah, I would say that there definitely was a list. Julie, you were talking about therapy more, and I did start this thing where I take accountability pictures in my therapy, like walking up the stairs. They have a full wall that's a mirror, and so I'll take like my accountability Thursday therapy picture and I'll post it, and so people know that it doesn't have to be a stigma. It doesn't have to be talked bad about. And so that is one thing I wanted to add in there real quick, that's always, it's just nice
I
to
Yeah.
put it
love
out there.
I
I think
love
it's
that.
perfect that I had that pause and you got to say that because I think it reminded me of
Did
what
you
I
get
want
it
to
back?
ask. Yeah.
Good.
It's what is your intention? Because a lot of people will go to therapy for the sake of talking or just having someone that they can kind of, be a soundboard with. For you, what was your intention? Like going to therapy for you means that you get to complete the sentence.
Fill in the blank. Absolutely.
Yeah.
My main purpose was to rein back on some of my control issues that maybe stemmed from my strict background and be able to live life in a better quality. So we're working through things like it's okay to not have full control over what you don't know because it's the unknown. And a fear of the unknown is always something I have had, but I didn't know why. So things like that have just really, you know, brought that light bulb on and like, wow, okay, it makes sense why I do this, but it doesn't have to be this way. And it can be a gradual change. It doesn't have to be overnight. I have to stop doing these behaviors. It's getting there. So that's the main purpose I feel that I'm getting.
Yeah, I love that you take those Thursday accountability photos in the hall.
I
I think
do.
that's awesome. And I think it kind of goes back to the way that you utilize the supports around you to be able to continue that process, even when it felt hopeless and felt like, oh, I'm just spinning my wheels here, because the person who referred you to that therapist who said, hey, I know this person, they seem like they'd be a good fit, they were only able to do that because you were putting it out there that you were looking and
Yeah,
that you were looking and wanting these certain types of things. And so the fact that you were having these conversations is what allowed you to continue on and to find that right fit person. And so I just think it's awesome because then you're doing that for other people. Other people are like, okay, I can put it out there that I'm looking for the right fit person, right? And that can come to you as needed.
yes, I hope that people look for therapists and counselors just like they would look for a plumber, you know,
Yeah,
recommendations for a plumber, recommendations for a therapist, it's just that simple. And if we make it that simple, people will see that learned behavior, right? So,
absolutely. And even, even more, it's so personal, right? Like, and a plumber is so specific, right? Because we have specific needs with our house has specific needs for our plumbers.
mhm.
And we have specific needs as humans for who and how we accept and are able to get support. So I love that. I also loved your recommendation about finding therapists who have multiple different disciplines and different techniques and interventions, because it can be a case where when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So when somebody only has one intervention, that might be the perfect intervention for you and exactly what you need, but it might not be. And so having a therapist who is well versed and well trained, that way they can be more individually responsive to what you actually need. So I think those are just such great tips. Uh,
Absolutely. Especially looking, if somebody's first thing on their thing is, LGBTQ, not just ruling it out like I don't fit that category, they wouldn't be a good therapist for me. But underneath there, if you keep reading, they have experience in ODD or RAD, and that's fitting for whatever you need. It just don't rule one out just because of the first thing you see.
Yeah, and I think that attests to what you were mentioning earlier in terms of just having that openness. And I think that's something that is very important in this journey of finding a therapist is that we're flawed, right? We've gone through some things, and because we've gone through these things and we have these scars, our vision isn't as clear. So it is necessary to be open. I think my next question for you is in doing your healing and you're on this journey, you found a therapist. How has it impacted how you show up in your day to day thus far? I know it's only been 2 or 3 sessions, but I think the audience would love to know, how has things changed for you with since taking those 3 sessions?
The confidence that I have gotten in myself just through these, 3 or 4 sessions has been just amazing. So much so that I come home and I tell my fiance about my sessions and about what I realized and, maybe why I do some of the things I do, which has also then made him understand why I do some of the things I do, which has then caused him to help. he helps with what I have been struggling with. Some of the things that I feel I need to have control over, he'll start doing them. So then I don't have to. So my day to day looks much different now because I'm opening up and letting him in. Whereas before counseling and before a therapist, I couldn't do that because I didn't know. So my control on things in the house that have a place, but they're not there, it's okay. It's okay that it's not in its place because it's a lived-in house, and I can bring back that control and not worry about it and continue enjoying my life. So quality of life has definitely increased.
Yeah, I love that. And I know you mentioned EMDR a little bit. Can you kind of give like a little brief synopsis of what EMDR is and how you've been using that in therapy?
Sure. I go to a therapist that has the little vibrating pads that go in each one of your hands, and I close my eyes. He goes on about he'll tell me to start talking about an experience that I feel like I have lost control over or that has taken over part of my life, and just kind of think back to those times and certain situations on how I felt in that situation and how I wanted to feel in that situation so that I can almost retrain my brain to respond differently when those situations arise now. And after the first session I did it, I was very hesitant to do it. And I told him that it probably wouldn't work. The first time I ended up opening my eyes and I was just amazed because something actually happened. I actually realized why some of these things happen and that it's not just me being crazy and needing everything to be perfect, but it's just how my brain was trained. So, and being okay with relearning things and being open to relearning things is a big part of being successful, I feel like, in that.
Absolutely. It's cool the different EMDR techniques or tools that the buzzies, the little vibrating pads. It's just so cool. I think that when people kind of experience it, and it can be the pads or it can be the lights that go back and forth, or it can be sound, and just those different ways of allowing the brain to connect with the body and with the subconscious is just it's incredible what
Yes.
happens, those messages that our body and our subconscious have been sending to us in ways that we didn't really love in the past, right? Now as this free kind of channel to get into our conscious mind and can go, okay, she gets it now, right? Like, okay, she's got it. She's got the
Yep.
message. Now I can stop screaming it all the time, right? It's just awesome to see that stuff. And you had mentioned ODD, and you had mentioned red, and you had mentioned control, and you had mentioned trust. And I think these are things that people, when we've got certain symptoms or certain challenges in our lives, looking at trust and looking at control, almost every diagnosis that we do has in some way is tied to control and trust and safety, right? Trust, safety. And so what I love about this is you mentioned uh, that you were able to let go of some of that control as you built trust. Uh,
Hmm.
and you mentioned your therapist and how after you had gone through a couple of these sessions, you had more trust and it kind of built after each time because you told him this isn't going to work. And he was like, okay, well, let's try it. Right. And you did,
Yep.
and it did. And you're like, okay, that builds a little bit more trust every time. I'm curious, what were some of the other things that help you build trust in a therapeutic relationship, either for yourself when you're going to a therapist, or also what are some of the things that you do for your clients that
Yeah.
help build that trust?
I I feel like rapport is very important with any relationship. And starting off slow, in my opinion, is the best way. So even when I went to my first therapy session, it started off slow. We did a lot of just talking, a lot of background, a lot of almost asking each other questions too, and kind of getting to know each other. And I liked that my therapist opened up about himself a little bit, and I was able to relate with him. Not so far as like crossing a boundary or a line there, but just able to, I'm spring cleaning this weekend, and I'm like, oh, I should do that, So it's kind of that dialogue there. He also keeps fidgets in his office, which I'm a sucker for a good fidget. And so I will fidget during my therapy sessions. Now I have a fidget bag in my bag that I take into my clients' sessions, and they'll pick out a fidget, or if it's appropriate, they'll pick out a fidget. But sometimes when we're working on focus and control, that does not seem to work as well with a fidget. Um, but yeah, I've definitely carried that on with my clients, and it seems to work. Building that rapport slowly, not just diving right in the first second I get in their door and telling them what I expect of them. Just building that rapport, so important.
So, first question, two-parter. What's a fidget?
A fidget toy is just something that you could keep in your hands while you're talking, and it moves back and forth. Some of them
Okay.
are squishy, some of them make noise. I like to get 3D printed fidgets, so those are the ones that I usually keep around. I buy them at different vendor sales, and just different ways to manipulate your hands, but continue that flow of conversation, because otherwise, what do you do with your hands? I don't know what to do with my hands. So it's just a way to kind of engage in that conversation, that active listening, that active conversation.
Okay, well, thank you for
You're welcome.
sharing.
Absolutely.
And my second question, would you say that having gone through therapy thus far, working with the clients that you work with now, do you sense that there's a difference in your interaction? Has it improved? Has it stayed the same? What's that been like for you?
It has definitely improved due to my being able to let go of some of the control that I had. So in my previous job, I worked at a nursing home, and I was a therapeutic recreation specialist with older adults in a nursing home. And when my control issues would get so bad, I would want to like take over on their art projects because they weren't doing it right. Or Mary, you're not doing this exercise right. Your arm is bent. You got to get it right. You got to get it together. Those aren't things that are so important. So being able to let loose and let control go of those aspects has made me a better BHIS worker, I would say.
I it makes me laugh, Callie, because um so when Joe and I were I think we were engaged at the time. We went with another couple to a couples painting class, right? A couples painting evening.
Did
And
Joe pick that out?
what?
Did Joe pick that out?
He did not,
Oh,
but he did attend. And so the premise was two canvases that side by side would make a tree, right? So I would paint one side and he would paint the other side of the scene. Well, I'm glad we did that before we got married, because I remember, and it comes back to me all the time, that I was painting his branches on his canvas, and I'd be like, this part isn't filled in right? Or I put one over here, so you need to put one over here, right? And I I remember this so well because I was just doing it. And then I remember him saying super loudly, "Stop touching my canvas." Right? This side is my tree. And it's it just always makes me laugh because it was one of those aha moments for me where I was like, oh no, I do this all the time in our relationship, right? All the time. I'm not just painting on his thing. I'm telling him what to do. I'm trying to control my partner all the time. And so we hung that up in our bedroom right by our bed. And I see it every single day. And it always reminds me, right? Like paint on my own side of the canvas.
I
Uh,
love that reminder. that's a perfect example and a perfect reminder. And especially if it's still there, you still get that to this day.
Absolutely. It is just so funny. And I've got another one hanging up in my room that my daughter and I, when she was like 3 or 4, we were painting separate canvases. And she got upset with me about something. I used the last of the pink or something like that. And she did a giant swash down my painting. And I was so upset with her. And I remember being so upset. And then again, I was like, oh no, I do this all the right. Like I'm upset with a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old for wrecking what I'm trying to like perfectly put together, right? How it's gonna look and all of that. And my husband came home and I was like, I'm upset with Monica, like that she did this. And he was like, okay. And then the next morning, um, he had painted, she had painted a Band-Aid over the swash that she had done on my painting. She painted a Band-Aid over it and he painted flowers like next to it. And he was like, this painting is for all of us. And that painting is also in my bedroom, and
I love
I
that.
see it every day. And it reminds me every day, like, okay, this is my tendency is to be upset when people mess with my stuff, right? And how beautiful those things can come out. The creation, the life that we're creating can come out when we kind of let go of that and allow whatever it is that is going to happen to just be what happens.
I love that. I love those little reminders.
I can relate.
Yeah, that's cute. Okay, so I know you mentioned your supervisor here is actually who kind of kept like pushing you to try another therapist, shop around. So if you could give a suggestion then to somebody listening who's maybe struggling at finding a therapist or wanting to give up because the therapist they've met with doesn't work, what suggestion might you give to someone like on the fence about continuing to try and find a therapist for them?
I would say to talk about it because you don't know who could give you that recommendation to the perfect person for you, the perfect fit. So as long as you keep talking about your struggles, your wins, your all of that, as long as you keep talking about it to people, you never know when that perfect opportunity to find that therapist is going to be. So that's my advice. Just don't give up like I did the first 3 times.
Love that. Love that. Yeah. Just keep going and talking about it. That's so important. That's something that we haven't really talked about on this show in terms of, ways through that barrier. So I thank you so much for bringing that up because the more we talk about it, the more that people know what we're looking for and can help us and support us in that search. So wonderful. Well, Callie, thank you so much for being here today. This was wonderful information, wonderful discussion. It's always great seeing you and talking to you, and we just love it. So thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you guys. This was so much fun.
Awesome. We want to thank our third mic as well, our guest host, Carell Richards of In Divine Time, Transformational Hypnotherapy. Always great to have you here. Amazing questions. Just wonderful, wonderful addition to the show. So we love having you here. Can't wait to have you back again.
Yes, you'll see me in July.
Yes. Awesome.
I'm Callie Dahlhauser, and I need a counselor.
Awesome.
I'm Chrissa Hunt.
I'm Carell Richards.
And I'm Julie Johnson, and we need a counselor.
So do you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the You Need a Counselor podcast. We are so grateful that you're here. Now, we want to hear from you. Text us or give us a call at 515-650-3231. You can also find and connect with You Need a Counselor on Facebook and Instagram. If you've enjoyed today's show, please take a moment to like, review, or leave a comment, as all of these things help others to find and benefit from the podcast as well. If you're in the state of Iowa and interested in mental health counseling or behavioral health intervention services, give us a call at 800-531-4236. And if you're a provider seeking play therapy CEUs, you can find us on patreon.com/youneedatraining. We'll see you for the next episode, Sunday at 5.